There's growing tension in the West Bank. Palestinians there express their anger in protest against Israeli strikes on Gaza. Israeli forces are on high alert. Is another uprising in the making? And how will Israel react? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mike Hanna. A number of Palestinians have been killed in the occupied West Bank during protests against Israel's offensive in Gaza. Israeli forces have been on high alert in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The Palestine Liberation Organization has called for a day of rallies in solidarity with the people in Gaza. On Thursday night, demonstrations turned violent after Israeli security forces confronted protesters at the Kalandia checkpoint. Al Jazeera spoke to some of the protesters.
For 18 days, the people of Gaza have been killed. We should have started protesting from the very first day to end this aggression.
We are here to stand with our people in Gaza. Today is the beginning of a new intifada in the occupied Palestinian territories against the occupier and his aggression towards Gaza.
Hamas and the Fatah-led Palestine Liberation Organization announced they were uniting earlier this year. It ended nearly 8 years of hostilities. The rift began in 2006 when Hamas heavily defeated Fatah in democratic elections. A Hamas-led government was formed but not recognized internationally. Fighting between the rivals intensified in 2007 with Hamas ousting Fatah and seizing the Gaza Strip. Fatah took control of the occupied West Bank. The fundamental difference between the two groups is their stance on Israel. The Fatah-dominated PLO recognizes Israel, but Hamas does not. Both sides have tried to mend the rift twice in 2011 and 2012, but those talks failed. It was not until last month when the factions finally signed a unity agreement. Well, let's bring in our guests to discuss all these issues. In Jerusalem, Alon Liel is the former Director General of the Israeli Foreign Ministry. And in Ramallah, we have Mustafa Barghouti, the Secretary General for the Palestinian National Initiative. Welcome to you both. To begin with, Mustafa Barghouti, is a new front of resistance against Israel opening up in the occupied West Bank?
Yes and no. Yes, because yesterday we've seen serious development towards a full-fledged uprising, peaceful, non-violent, but yet an uprising against Israeli occupation. Yet it's not new, because this movement of popular non-violent resistance has been growing for the last 12 years, and it definitely reached a peak yesterday when more than 25,000 people marched peacefully towards the Kalandia checkpoint, demanding access to Jerusalem on the holiest night of the year for Muslims and Arabs. And the Israeli army encountered this peaceful march, which had families, men, women, children from all ages and generations. They encountered us with high-velocity bullets, with gunshots. They shot 250 people with high-velocity bullets. 6 of them are in critical conditions. 6 have lost their eyes, and 1 unfortunately died. And by the way, just an hour ago, the Israeli army killed 4 other Palestinians, 2 in Nablus and 2 in Hebron. So peaceful, non-violent resistance, which are not Hamas demonstrations, are also encountered with severe violence by the Israeli army. What the army did yesterday in Ramallah is not different at all from what the apartheid army in South Africa did to the popular marches in Soweto at one point of time. And I think yesterday will be a turning point in the struggle of the Palestinian people, because even when we peacefully, non-violently march and demonstrate in thousands of people, we are still attacked by severe violence from the side of the Israeli army, which is simply preventing us from reaching Jerusalem, our city, the city I was born in, the city where all Palestinians go out to pray in Ramadan and on other days of the year.
Well, let's go to Alon Liel at this particular point. Alon Liel, is there concern in Israel that we might be witnessing the beginning of a third intifada?
I think most of the concerns in Israel at the moment are regarding what's happening in Gaza. Still missiles on the major cities, including Tel Aviv today. The issue of the tunnels, and the fact that the army is inside Gaza fighting casualties. I think the focus of the Israeli public is there. Of course, the public has heard about what happened in Kalandia yesterday, but I myself, and I think most of the Israelis, maybe even all of them, did not hear the story the way Mustafa Barghouti described it. We heard that there was a demonstration. We heard that there was fire at the audience. We heard about 2, later maybe 3 people killed, but there were no details. And I think the focus is still on Gaza. Obviously, the possibility of a spillover into Gaza is a possibility, is worrying, but it's not the focus.
Well, Mustafa Barghouti, the issue of a spillover, some would argue that it is far more than that one is beginning to see in the West Bank over the past 24 hours, that it may well be another point of action against Israel on a concerted basis.
If you want to say that this is the beginning of a third uprising, I am answering you, yes, I wish so, and I think it is. But it's a peaceful, non-violent uprising mainly in the West Bank, similar to the first Intifada, and it will not be militarized. Yet I want to say that what the Israeli guest said is really sad, makes me feel sad, because I think he reflected the ignorance of the Israeli public, which allows itself to be driven by a misleading leadership. Leadership that insists to misrepresent the facts. The fact that it didn't hear about the march, which was the largest in the history of Palestinian occupied territories, and he didn't hear about killing the Palestinians. He didn't hear about Israeli army shooting civilians. If they didn't hear all these details, then he is in ignorance. And that's exactly what's happening to the Israeli public. They don't understand that the cause of what's happening in Gaza is occupation. They don't understand that things started in the West Bank and not in Gaza. It started with a campaign of collective punishment by the Israeli army against Palestinians in the West Bank, arresting 1,000 Palestinians, invading 3,000 houses, shooting 30 Palestinians and killing them. We are under occupation. This is the cause of the problem. We are under a system of apartheid and discrimination, which affects Palestinians not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank in different forms. The people in Gaza are under the most terrible siege in human history, creating the worst humanitarian crisis. Yesterday, the Israeli army managed to force half of the population of Gaza out of their homes and out of their land. 44% of that little piece, which is 140 square miles, full of 1.8 million people, 44% of it was declared unsafe to the population.
Well, let me go. Apologies for interrupting you, Mustafa. But I'd like to go to Elon Leal I'd like to go to Elon Leal with that first point you made, that the argument that what is happening in Gaza is a consequence of a wider oppression involving the West Bank as well. It's not necessarily directly Gaza-related. Your view on that?
I think in Israel there are 2 views. One view is that Hamas is an Islamic fundamentalist movement tied to all this Islamic movement that popped up all over al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, ISIS, and so on. And the other opinion is that they are the violent part of the Palestinian people. I belong to the second half, but a lot of people see them almost as unrelated to the Palestinian conflict, and even the Prime Minister in the press conference with Ban Ki-moon said that Hamas is connected to radical Islamist movements. There is another point I want to make, and this is Abu Mazen. Abu Mazen and the Fatah and the West Bank. It's 19 days of this war, And these 19 days, of course, drag the focus to Gaza. And during these 19 days, we have a huge debate going on in Israel. Should the war end with Abu Mazen as stronger than Hamas or stronger than before this war, or shouldn't we strengthen Abu Mazen? This is a huge debate. The government doesn't know what to do. Senior ministers do not know what to do. Some of them think Abu Mazen is part of the solution. Some of them say Abu Mazen is still part of the problem. I think it'll be very important if after this war or toward the end of this war, it will be clear, at least to the top leaders in Israel, that there is a huge difference between Abu Mazen and Hamas regarding their attitude to Israel and to the issue of violence. And I personally think that it will be a terrible mistake not to include Abu Mazen in the formula that will end this conflict. And I think these are the big things now. What happened yesterday in Kalandia is again strengthening those who are saying Abu Mazen and violence are the same and Gaza will burn in 2 days and Abu Mazen and Hamas, no difference at all. I belong to those who think that there is a huge difference between Abu Mazen and Ania.
Well, let me go to Mustafa Barghouti on this issue. Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, head of the PLO, issued a call for rallies to take place on this day. There had been criticism from various Palestinian sectors of his role that he was playing in attempting to get a ceasefire. Is the fact that he's now getting more active in terms of calling for protest an intention of bolstering his credibility among the Palestinian people as a whole?
The rallies did not happen because Abbas called for them. The rallies happened because the Palestinian people are one people. Because the Palestinians are very angry at what's happening to their brothers and sisters and relatives in Gaza. The Israel finds it suitable for itself to claim that this is a war on Hamas. It's not. It's a war on all Palestinians. Hamas are part of the Palestinian people. And what Israel is doing in Gaza is acts of massacres and genocide against ordinary Palestinians. 833 people have been killed and 5,400 have been injured. 90% of them are civilians, women and children. And the Palestinians in the West Bank are in complete solidarity with the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, because those in Gaza who are killed today and forced out of their homes are the same Palestinians mostly who were forced out of their homes in 1948 from Jaffa, Haifa, Akka. The Palestinian people are one unit. Israel keeps looking for a structure that could work as collaborators with Israel to keep occupation and to keep a system of apartheid. But they are wrong. Their Arabists are wrong, because the Palestinians are people who want freedom. And they are all unified. And let's remember that the main goal that Netanyahu put for his campaign today and for these massacres that are happening in Gaza is to break what we started to build, which is Palestinian unity. He wants us to be divided so that we can be weak, so that he can continue consolidating a system of apartheid on the ground.
Well, let me put that to Elon Leal, if I may, Mustafa.
Israel had 21 years to negotiate with Palestinians and did not
Let's put that directly to Elon Leal, though. The contention that you've just made, that one of the prime motivations for Israel's action in Gaza was to strike a blow against the unity government that has been formed in recent months, a unity government that Benjamin Netanyahu has made very, very clear he opposes. Do you think there's any credence to this argument?
You know, I'm not the spokesman of the government. I'm in the opposition all the time, at least in the last 10 years since I'm not in the government. I know that Netanyahu didn't like this unity government at all, criticized Abu Mazen for doing it, but I still don't think that's the reason of the war, definitely not of the ground entry. And I want a question to Mustafa Barghouti. Are you, Mustafa Barghouti, personally in favor of missiles on Tel Aviv? I want to know, as a system, And also, I want to say, you blamed me for being ignorant. Do you know that in your very peaceful demonstration in Jerusalem,
I will answer you
there
if
was
you
shooting.
answer my
There was
question. Are
shooting.
you, no,
there
you
was
answer
shooting.
me first.
Okay, answer the first
No,
No,
question.
you
Palestinians.
answer me first. Are you for occupation? Are you for oppressing Palestinians? Are you
No,
for occupying us?
I'm against
Are you for
occupation.
depressing us? You will not put me on the defense
I'm
with your
against.
questions. How many Israelis
Yeah,
were killed
I'm
by the
answering.
rockets? 833 Palestinians were massacred in
This-
Gaza. Are you against the massacre in
Why
Gaza?
don't-
Are you against killing people
Well,
in
let's-
Gaza?
let-
Tell
let's-
me.
if I may,
Are you
just
against
so if you
killing
take
people
the-
in a shelter in Unrwa school or not?
Well, let's take that first
You are a
question that was
violent
put to
country.
you, Mustafa Barghouti. The question was, are you in favor of rockets being fired on Israel or not?
I am against all forms of violence. I said that so many times. He knows very well that I am advocating non-violence. But yesterday, we had the most non-violent, peaceful march in our history. And we were shot at by the Israeli army. He should tell me, is that right?
Mustafa.
Is it right that Israeli soldiers would shoot civilians who are peacefully marching?
Alon Leal?
Mustafa, first of all, I appreciate
Let
your
him
answer
answer.
very much. I'm against, one second, I'm against the occupation. According to what we have heard here, Palestinians in the Kalandia march yesterday were shooting armed with weapons at the soldiers, and the army was responding
This is
in
a lie.
shooting too. Yeah. If
This
it's
is a lie.
if
A big
it's-
fat
if-
lie.
Okay, I'm
You
not.
are repeating
I don't
lies
know. This
because
is.
you want to give justification to the
Okay.
Israeli army.
I think.
No, you don't
I
know. Then
think
don't
I'm not-
make
I'm not the
conclusions if you don't
spokesman.
know. I was there. You were not
I
there.
don't say-
I know the truth because I was there and you were not there. So you cannot give me conclusions about something that never happened just to justify the behavior of the massacres that your army is doing. I want you to answer. What do I tell the
don't-
people here who peacefully marched and then lost their eyes? What do I tell them if they lost their lives? I tell them we should just be peaceful and Israel can kill us forever? This is the question
Mustafa,
that should be answered by every
I
Israeli.
think we-
You can't keep defending
Okay.
a system of occupation and apartheid and sit calmly in your office.
Let's let Alon Leal just respond to that.
Mustafa, I think the important thing is that both of us support non-violence. I'm not justifying anyone, but if there was no shooting yesterday from the Palestinian side, you have, please, to tell it, to shout it, to prove it, and then you have a very strong point, But I'm not saying I know.
And we will
I said what I
pressure
heard
President
in the
Abbas
Israeli
to go to
press.
the International Criminal Court because we want an independent investigation.
Well, that will probably
We
happen.
need an
But Mustafa
independent
Barghouti,
investigation. Why
let's move
Israel
on
refuses
here.
to
Let's
cooperate with
move on to something that we really do need to discuss, and that is the issue of Palestinian unity that you are arguing is something that Israel is deeply opposed to. Yet there are some within Palestinian factions that are saying that the war in Gaza, the operation in Gaza, is putting a strain on the unity of Palestinians, given Mahmoud Abbas's role in attempting to secure a ceasefire, and given the fact that he has been prepared to talk to Israel in an attempt to form the truce. Is Palestinian unity still sticking? Is it still strong, despite the last few weeks' events?
Actually, it got much stronger. Because now Israel is not negotiating with Hamas alone. Israel is negotiating through John Kerry with Hamas, with the Palestinian PA, and with all Palestinians, all Palestinian groups. And there is a unified Palestinian position that we want immediate ceasefire, we want immediate lifting of the siege on Gaza, and we want this humanitarian crisis to be over. And that's why Israel now, which claimed for a very long time that there was an Egyptian proposal and Hamas was rejecting it and the PA was for Egyptian proposal and Hamas was against it, now Israel has to face the fact that all Palestinians are unified and the Israelis are negotiating with a unified Palestinian group. On the other hand, we will proceed with this unity. We want to create a unified leadership with Hamas and Jihad and the Palestinian Initiative together with all PLO groups together in one unified front. And we should have a unified government eventually, not just a consensus government. And we should have free democratic system and free democratic elections in which everybody can participate. In my opinion, because of Israeli massacres in Gaza, the Palestinians are much more united than ever before. And this Israeli game, which was used always by colonial powers, to divide and rule will not succeed.
Well, Elon Leal, has there been a program of an attempt to divide and rule? What's your view?
Even if there was, I personally think that stronger, united leadership among the Palestinians is good. But the question is, who has the upper end? If you have a Palestinian unity under Khaled Mashal and Hania, you don't have even me in the peace camp. And if you have it under Abu Mazen and people like Mustafa and others who support non-violence, who agree to the existence of Israel, it will be great. We want the Palestinian people to be together. If we ever have peace with the Palestinians, we don't want it to be with half of the Palestinian people. We want it with all the Palestinian people. But who stands on top? Who leads the Palestinians? Can Abu Mazen go to Gaza, stay in Gaza, control the passages in Gaza, or not? We didn't see Abu Mazen in Gaza, if I'm not wrong, for years now. So this is a unity. When Abu Mazen cannot visit Gaza, this is unity.
Mustafa Barghouti, do you want to respond to that?
Let me tell you, I want to give you some news because it's clear that you are not getting enough news from your media in Israel. The news are as follows. First of all, you will not, the Israelis, choose who leads Palestinians, as much as we will not choose who is leading you. I think you have the most extreme government in your history, with people like Lieberman, with people like Naftali Bennett. I mean, these are racists. It's even shameful to have such people in leadership. Anyhow, but I'm telling you, you will not choose our leaders. Second, Hamas is ready for a peace based on two-state solution if you accept two-state solution. Third, Hamas is ready even to accept non-violent approach if Israel abstains from using any form of violence. So you will not divide us. We will all be unified, and the choice of who has more voices, more votes, more seats will be decided by the Palestinian people according to a democratic system. The problem with Israel is that its leaders, its governments, including Paris, including even Yitzhak Rabin, who was assassinated by Israelis, they never accepted the right of Palestinians to have a truly independent state. Israel is the only country in the world that did not decide yet what are its borders. When you decide your borders, the two-state solution will be possible, but you haven't yet. And by doing so, you are increasing settlers on the ground and killing the very last opportunity of two-state solution.
Well, let's go to Elon Leal very quickly, if I may, Mustafa.
We want to be democratic.
Let's go to Elon Leal very quickly there to respond to what you're saying and the question that you asked. Elon Leal, the question that was made there, does Israel want a two-state solution or not?
First of all, I belong to the peace camp in Israel. I criticize Lieberman and Bennett on a daily basis, and I would like to see more criticism coming from the Fatah on the Hamas. But Mustafa is correct. We are ignorant. We never heard the Hamas say they accept the state of Israel and they accept the two-state solution. If you hear about it and if they say it, please let us know. We never heard it. So we are really ignorant.
Well, your view on that, Mustafa, very quickly.
Well, I'm teaching you.
Okay.
Yes, I learned
something today.
All the time.
You only
and
have
I am
to,
telling you, I wish that the Israeli government would give us access to Israeli media so that we can tell you about the right positions. But you don't want to know. That's the problem. And the Israeli public is benefiting from Jazeera that has become the longest in modern history.
Well, at that particular point, we've come to an end of this discussion. Thanks to my guests, Elon Leal and Mustafa Barghouti. And you can leave your comments on facebook.com/AJ Inside Story or go to @AJ Inside Story on Twitter. I'm Mike Hanna. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.